Okay. Mic check 1212. I am the Y2K collector, and I'm here to do a quick comparison between 4 handheld consoles that I typically use to play my Game Boy Advanced games. Now, the Game Boy Advanced is, in my opinion, one of the most underrated consoles to ever come out. I think that the games on the Game Boy Advanced are remarkable graphically when you look at some of the games, and some of them are just downright fun. I mean, it's a very large and extensive library, and it doesn't have as much shovelware or fluff as you would think for a handheld console, but there are a lot of ways that you can play Game Boy Advanced games. You have the original Game Boy Advance that came out, you have the Game Boy Advanced SP, you have the DS Lite, which also had the capability of playing Game Boy Advanced games, you had the Game Boy Micro, and then a whole host of other ways you could play it, including the Game Boy player for the GameCube. You also have things like the Analogue Pocket. And there are just a number of ways that you can play Game Boy Advanced games. But for today's comparison, I'm really looking at the 4 consoles that I have and use in my collection when it comes to playing Game Boy Advanced games. And I really want to compare the form factor and just talk about how it feels and what the experience is like playing on these 4 consoles, and which one I like the most out of the 4 options that I have in my collection. Now, I think that each console brings its unique set of positive and negatives when it comes to playing Game Boy Advance games. But I'm going to go ahead and save all the time with the jabbering and blabbering and just get started by looking at the first console that I have and use to play Game Boy Advance games, and that is my original Game Boy Advance that I have in my collection here. Now, this console does not come with any type of backlit screen, so whenever you're using a console like this, you do need to make sure that you have an adequate light source when you're playing the Game Boy Advanced, just because, as you can see here, you're really not going to get any light on this. So they did sell different items that you could use. They have like a light that you can use to kind of shine some light on the screen. I think it's like an attachable light that you can use. I never really had any of those devices when I had a Game Boy Advanced. I just tried my best to find a light source when it came to playing games on here. Now, I'm the type of person, not the type of person, but I'm one of those kids who grew up with a Game Boy, like the original Game Boy. So when the Game Boy Advance came out, I was just amazed at the next level of colors and textures that were offered on the Game Boy Advanced. As far as form factor, I think for kids, and even as an adult, I think I have fairly sized hands. I don't think I have small hands. I think my hands are fairly sized. And the Game Boy Advanced is one of those consoles that actually works well because it's built out more horizontally than vertically, like most handheld consoles are. And so there's a good enough distance between the D-pad and your A and B button to kind of, get a good gaming session in. I think, where all the buttons are pretty intuitive. Your left and right analog, start and select. I mean, it's pretty basic. It's a very basic device, but I mean, it hits all the main points when it comes to a handheld gaming console. That it works. It does last for a really long time with these 2D AA batteries, and I think for me, just in terms of gameplay and form factor, the Game Boy Advance, the original Game Boy Advance, is definitely up there, just because of how wide it is and the way the screen is laid out. I think one of the best ways that you can take advantage of the Game Boy Advanced is by doing a screen swap. If you can upgrade the screen on a Game Boy Advance and add that backlit screen, I think that would be probably one of the top 2 or 3 ways of playing Game Boy Advance games. But I would say that playing them on the original Game Boy Advance is a great way to experience Game Boy Advance games, probably the most nostalgic way. and I really do like the form factor of this console. Just wish it had a backlit screen. All right, so I'm gonna move on to the second way that I play Game Boy Advance games, and that is on my Game Boy Advanced SP. Now, this was the second, I don't know if this was the second Game Boy Advance console. I don't know if there was anything in between, but the Game Boy Advanced SP was another way that you could play Game Boy Advance games back in the day. And I actually got one of the models that has the backlit screen, and it comes with 2 levels of illumination. You have this first level, and then when you bump it up, you get a second level there. Here I've got this copy of Gunstar. I think this is Gunstar Superheroes. But as you can see right off the bat, one of the biggest advantages of playing your Game Boy Advance games on the Game Boy Advance SP is just that beautiful backlit screen. This is a console that has to be at least 15 years old, maybe 15 to 20 years old. And if you look at this backlit screen, it's still bright, it still pops. And I think it's just a really cool way to just experience Game Boy Advance games. When it comes to the form factor, it is a little bit more difficult for someone with a larger hand, just because the buttons are all closer together. And so you can't really get a good grip on the console itself. So you wind up I find myself really holding it with more so my fingertips to be able to get access to all of the buttons. If I were to play a game that required a lot of like left and right action, I'd really kind of wind up having to hold the console with really just my fingertips to kind of get everything in there. But again, if you really want a nice compact way of playing games, I think the Game Boy Advance SP is a great way to go, especially if you're going camping, or especially if you're going to be on a road trip and you're going to be somewhere where there's no light, you're not going to have any type of a light source. Then yeah, I think the Game Boy Advance SP definitely does the job. The good thing with this console, unlike the Game Boy Advance, is that you don't need batteries on this. So you can charge this with the car charger and have non-stop gameplay. And again, for those road trips, I don't know if people do road trips anymore. I know road trips were a huge thing back when I was a kid, but if you're on a road trip and you don't really have a lot of battery life or really anything else to do, the Game Boy Advance P was definitely the way to go, because even if you're driving through the night, all you needed was that car charger and boom, you were off and running to the next adventure. So I definitely think the Game Boy Advance SP was one of the best ways to experience Game Boy Advance games. I think the colors just pop on this console. It is a smaller form factor than the Game Boy Advance. I think I guess when you unfold it, it's probably about the same size. Definitely a great way to experience Game Boy Advance games. It's one of the ways that I play my Game Boy Advance games, and I would definitely recommend it. Getting the AGS 101 model is definitely going to be more expensive than, say, going with like the Game Boy Advanced, because you could probably get a Game Boy Advanced for somewhere in the neighborhood of I don't know, $60 to $80 for a pretty clean advanced Game Boy Advance. The one that I have is pretty much in like new condition, so the one like this would probably, I could see someone charging $90. But when it comes to the AGS 101, the SP with the backlit screen, these were running at one point pretty expensive. They were like around $150. I don't know where they're at now, because I haven't been in the market for an advanced SP for a really long time. But I know that a lot of times folks will try to charge a good amount for the advanced SP. All right, so now we're going to move on to the third way that I play my Game Boy Advanced games, and that is on a console that I got when it first came back out. This console came out probably during my freshman year of college, and when I was in my dorm room and had absolutely nothing to do, this little device brought me a lot of fun. This is the Game Boy Micro. This thing is super cool. It's about half the size of my hand, so it's really, really small. Very, very tiny device. Now, the size and form factor of the Game Boy Micro is its biggest strength and its biggest weakness at the same time. So what makes it a weakness is that it's incredibly difficult to play this console for a long time. If I'm gonna just want something to keep me occupied for maybe 30 minutes to an hour at a time, and I just want to have like a quick little gaming device, the Micro came in handy all the time, because obviously this is just a really quick way to get in some gaming. The challenge becomes when you're starting to play a game that's like really intense or requires a lot of concentration or precision, and you need to do any type of repeated motion, like if it's a fighting game. That's where using the Game Boy Micro becomes a huge challenge for someone like me, because again, I'm really using my fingertips at this point to really hold the controller and tap all the buttons at the same time. So Game Boy Micro was actually really, really awesome console when it came out. Very simple. Barely big enough to fit the Game Boy Advance cartridge, right? But you got everything you need all packed in here. And I think the biggest feature for this thing is this a beautiful backlit screen. The Game Boy Micro probably has, I would say that the screen is better than the Advance SP, but the only reason why I wouldn't say that is because the Advance SP is bigger. And I think when you adjust the brightness, it actually does wind up coming out to being a little bit brighter. But the Micro has a great screen and actually has a great sound system at that. You can probably hear it in the background here, but for such a small device, it packed a really great punch when it comes to the sound quality. And one of the games that I remembered playing on the advanced Game Boy Advance Micro was it Shaman King. That game I played a ton on this little device here. But the Game Boy Micro is definitely a great console if you're looking for something that you can just slide in your pocket, something really, really tiny. You can put this in a suit jacket pocket if you're going to be at a long, boring wedding. I don't know. If you're going to be anywhere where you just want 20 to 30 minutes of just a device that can give you some good gaming action, I would definitely recommend the the Game Boy Micro. Definitely one of the better Game Boy Advanced consoles. All right, so that kind of does it for this one. I do have one more console that I like to play my Game Boy Advanced games on, and this one, it was not created by Nintendo. It's not a Nintendo licensed console. Rather, it's a device that came out a couple years ago. Everyone knows about it, and it is the Analogue Pocket. So the Analogue Pocket is basically a handheld device that has a lot of really cool features to it. I'm not going to even try to dive into all of the features of this console, just because there's so many videos out about it. As it relates to the Game Boy Advance, you can play Game Boy Advance games on this device. You can play the cartridges, as well as you can download Game Boy Advance ROMs along with other consoles and play them on this device as well. Additionally, I believe that there are adapters that you can buy for this piece here that will allow you to play Neo Geo Pocket games, Game Gear games, a whole host of different handheld consoles. And I think when it comes to the Analogue Pocket rather, the big selling feature on this console was the display and the resolution. So one thing that I will say about the Analogue Pocket is that it truly has the most beautiful screen I have ever seen, probably ever, on any kind of device. And it's really loud right now. I'm going to turn it down because this thing, I think I just turned it to sleep. But this device packs a serious punch when it comes to just the screen quality, along with the sound, The resolution on this is amazing, and when it comes to bringing out the best in Game Boy Advance games, playing, what you're looking at here is Metroid Zero Mission. I would say that the graphics on this game definitely look better than Super Nintendo, right? So I would say, when you're playing on a screen like this definitely outshines, any kind of, most Super Nintendo games. I mean, look at the graphics. The Analogue Pocket just brings out everything, the colors, the pixelation. This is an amazing device. And I would say that is the main selling feature, the main draw for something like the Analogue Pocket, at least for me. If I want to get a vibrant, good looking screen where I can get in some really good gameplay, I'm definitely going to turn to this device. I think I can't even get over this area here. Look, this is how much I suck at Metroid games. I used to be way better. Don't judge me. But when I think about, just playing, like a handheld game for a long period of time, the Analogue Pocket is definitely one of the consoles that I would look to, just because despite the screen being as amazing as it is, and despite it, because it's not really huge, it's bigger than all the other devices. It's bigger than the Game Boy Advance, it's bigger than the SP, it's bigger than the Micro, obviously. So this one does provide me with the best form factor, as well as great resolution. I just want to continue looking at the screen when I play my Analogue Pocket, just because of how beautiful everything looks on the screen. I mean, Zero Mission, Metroid is definitely one of the better games to use as an example, just because of how colorful and vibrant the game is. But even if, I take a game like, let's see, Metal Slug, which, Metal Slug typically tends to have that old kind of faded 90s look to it, no matter what console you play a game like Metal Slug on. But even when you play a game like Metal Slug on the Analogue Pocket, it's just an amazing experience. Again, even with that faded look of Metal Slug, it still brings out those colors. The greens pop. All the sprites are just, standing out. They're bold. There's good contrast here. And the sound quality, again, just makes this an amazing way to play your Game Boy Advance games. Now, there is an adapter for the Analogue Pocket that I think allows you to display gameplay on a screen. So there's a way where you can kind of scale this to your HD TV screen. I don't know if it works with 4K. I'm not sure if it's got all that, but there is a way that you can kind of attach this to a bigger screen and play these games, which kind of mimics, the functionality that you used to have with like the Game Boy player on the GameCube, right? That was one way that you could play your Game Boy Advance games on a big screen. And now with the Analogue Pocket, you can do the same thing. Oh, man, I'm trying to get this thing with a bomb. There it is. Wow. Bombs are just bouncing right off this thing. How come it's not? There we go. Cannot get those bombs to work. So definitely, this is definitely one of the better ways to play, I would say, your Game Boy Advance games. If you can get your hands on an Analogue Pocket, I would do it. This device is really expensive. Out of the 4 devices that I've talked about, the Analogue Pocket is the most expensive device. I know at one point this was going for $400 or $500. I think it's come down a lot. Maybe now it's $200, $300. I just know that it is one of the more expensive devices out of the 4. But it does have the best form factor to me, has the best resolution. Second most expensive is going to be your Micro. I know the Micro at one point was roughly around $200. It's probably come down from that since its peak. And then I already told you where the SP stand as well as the Advance stand. So it's really down to preference and what you like. Best resolution and form factor, Analogue Pocket. If you're looking for something discreet and quiet, really small that you can sneak around. The Micro is a great option. Looking for nostalgia, you can always go with the OG Game Boy Advance, and then the SP I think is just a kind of a great combination of all of the above. But these are my thoughts. This is kind of what I've uncovered, just kind of spending some time playing some of my Game Boy Advance games this afternoon. Let me know what you think down in the comments. What are your favorite ways to play your Game Boy Advanced games? And which ones do you think hold the most true today, in terms of, like, you know, when you compare the retro styles or the retro consoles to what we have available with things like the Analogue Pocket? I'm interested to know what you think, but thanks for stopping by. I am the Y2K Collector. Take it easy.